Hey friends, welcome back to Vivid Nightmares. I'm your host, Bridget Denise. And tonight's episode isn't just eerie, it's unsettling. Because this story doesn't happen in the dark of night or down some forgotten dirt road. It happened on Christmas Day in a small southern town where everything should have felt safe. A tree glowing in the parlor, a turkey in the oven, a family getting ready for dinner. But in Germanton, North Carolina, on December 25th, 1929, the Lawson family didn't get peace or joy or anything remotely close to it. What they got was blood. This is the story of Charles Davis Lawson, a hard-working tobacco farmer, a father of 7, and the man who murdered his entire family on one of the holiest days of the year. And the photo? The one he insisted they take, all dressed up in new clothes, standing stiff and strange, still haunts anyone who looks at it too long, because it feels like they knew, like something in that house had already turned. Tonight we're digging into what led to the Lawson Family Massacre, how a father unraveled in silence, and why some say the family home was cursed long before the first shot was fired. Vivid Nightmares. Let's start with the family. Charles Lawson was a 43-year-old tobacco farmer living in Germanton, just outside of Winston-Salem. He wasn't rich, but he wasn't struggling either. Married to Fanny, his quiet and devout wife. They had 7 children, Marie 17, sweet, responsible, and known to be her mama's right hand. And Arthur 19, the eldest son, known for being dependable. And Carrie 12 and Maybelle 7, school age, bright, inseparable. And James 4 and Raymond 2, always underfoot. And the baby, Mary Lou, just 4 months old. They lived in a modest farmhouse on 265 acres of tobacco land, rural, remote, the kind of place where everyone knew you. But nobody asked too many questions. In the days leading up to Christmas, Charles began acting strangely. He took the family into town to buy brand new clothes, a luxury they couldn't afford. He brought them to a professional photographer in Winston-Salem, which was almost unheard of for working-class families at the time. He wanted them cleaned up, posed, frozen in time. And that's the photo, the one you've probably seen, all of them standing stiffly, Fanny holding the baby, Charles dead center, no one smiling. And when you look at that picture now, you feel something under the surface, like grief that hadn't happened yet. No one knew that within days of that photo, 6 of the people in it would be dead. Up next, we walk through Christmas morning, the moment when Charles Lawson's quiet unraveling finally turned to murder. If this episode gave you chills or made you side-eye your hallway, share it with someone else who loves a good scare. Word of mouth is how we grow this haunted little community, and trust me, the more of us here, the darker it gets. Send it to your favorite true crime buddy or that one friend who swears they don't believe in ghosts yet. December 25th, 1929. While most families were unwrapping gifts and carving hams, the Lawsons were walking headfirst into a blood-soaked nightmare. That morning, Charles Lawson sent his son Arthur, the oldest, into town to buy ammunition for hunting. But that wasn't the real reason, because while Arthur was away, Charles had other plans. Just before noon, 12-year-old Carrie and 7-year-old Maybelle walked out toward their aunt and uncle's house to wish them Merry Christmas. They never made it. Charles was waiting near the barn. He shot both girls with a 12-gauge shotgun, then beat their skulls in to make sure they were dead. Then, and this part is especially disturbing, he carried their bodies into the tobacco barn, crossed their arms, and laid rocks beneath their heads like pillows. Not exactly the actions of someone in a blind rage. Back at the house, Fanny was sitting on the porch. He shot her next, point blank. When Marie ran screaming from the kitchen, he cornered her, chased her through the house, and gunned her down near the fireplace. The 2 young boys, James and Raymond, were hiding. but not well enough. He found them and he bludgeoned them to death. Then he walked to the crib and killed 4-month-old Mary Lou, the baby. No mercy, no hesitation. Some accounts say he beat her. Others say he crushed her skull with the butt of his gun. And then, silence. He walked out the door, disappeared into the woods behind the farm. When Arthur returned from town a few hours later, he found the house still, dead quiet. Inside, he discovered the horror. Neighbors heard the screaming. The sheriff was called. Later that afternoon, they found Charles in the woods, dead from a self-inflicted shotgun wound, propped up against a tree. Beside him, letters he'd written, unopened Christmas gifts, and according to local lore, a note that simply said, "Trouble can cause," that's it, "trouble can cause," no explanation, no closure, and to this day, no one knows what he meant. Up next, the investigation, the theories, and the rumors that still ripple through Germanton today, including one about a dark family secret that might have changed everything.
Have your own theory about tonight's case? Think the wrong person was blamed, or maybe someone wasn't blamed enough? Hit us up on Instagram or TikTok and drop your theory in the comments. I love hearing your take on these twisted stories. Your voice might even make it into a future episode.
The next morning, December 26, 1929, the Lawson farm was overrun with locals, reporters, and officers. More than 5,000 people showed up in the days that followed. People were so drawn to the horror that the Lawson home became a literal tourist attraction. Admission was charged, and people walked through the blood-stained farmhouse, while the Christmas cake Marie baked the day before still sat untouched on the table. Can you imagine a blood-soaked crime scene turned into a roadside exhibit? Let's talk motive. The official explanation back then? Insanity. A few months before the murders, Charles suffered a serious head injury while working on the farm. A neurologist in Winston-Salem examined his brain post-mortem and found no abnormalities. But others who knew him described a change in behavior. He was withdrawn, easily agitated, moody. Some suggested he was depressed or paranoid. The local paper, the Twin Cities Sentinel, quoted a sheriff as saying, "There's no logic in the way he carried it out. It was deliberate, clean, but not angry, not sloppy. He knew what he was doing." But then, decades later, another story surfaced. In 1985, a woman named Stella Lawson, Charles's niece, gave an interview that changed everything. She claimed that her family always suspected an incestuous relationship between Charles and his eldest daughter, Marie. According to Stella, people tried to keep it quiet back then, but Marie had confided in her cousin. She was pregnant, and the baby was her father's. Let that sink in for a second. If that's true, then this wasn't just a breakdown. It was cover-up by massacre. Because back in the 1920s, especially in the South, there was no space to talk about incest, no support, no recourse. If Marie had told someone, if others had started asking questions, Charles may have believed murder was the only way to stop it from coming out. Some researchers, like authors M. Bruce Jones and Trudy J. Smith in White Christmas, Bloody Christmas, suggest the incest theory isn't just plausible, but likely. But here's the thing. No confession was ever found, no court hearing, no survivors to testify except Arthur, who claimed to know nothing. And Arthur? He died in a car crash in 1945, just 16 years after his family was wiped out. Today, the Lawson murders are still one of North Carolina's most talked about true crime cases, not just because of how horrific they were, but because they remain emotionally unresolved. Was Charles a man tormented by brain trauma? A father trying to hide his abuse? A quiet monster no one ever suspected? Maybe it's all of the above. Coming up next, how this story became legend and why some say the Lawson family still hasn't left that land behind.
Leaving a 5-star review doesn't summon any spirits. Probably. But it does help Vivid Nightmares reach more true crime lovers who like their cases with a side of creepy. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. Click the stars and help me keep the nightmares coming.
After the bodies were buried and the crowds moved on, the Lawson farmhouse sat quiet, but it never stayed still. Within days, rumors of hauntings began. Locals said they heard crying from the tobacco barn, saw shadows in the windows at night, and claimed to smell gunpowder in the cold December air, even years after the murders. Some visitors reported hearing the sound of a baby wailing from the ruins. Others say they saw a woman in a long dress, believed to be Fanny, walking the path between the house and the barn. Even decades later, people who've trespassed on the land say the area feels wrong. One local paranormal team who visited the area in the late 90s claimed their audio recorder picked up the words, "He's still here." Whether that's Charles or something older than the house itself, we'll never know. The site of the murders is now private property, and the original house no longer stands. But that photo, the one taken just days before the killings, still circulates. It's like the family is staring back, frozen in time, caught between the weight of tradition, secrets, and fate. And that's the thing about Southern horror. It doesn't always come with ghosts or curses. Sometimes it wears a Sunday suit, kneels at the altar, and kisses its children goodnight. Then it pulls the trigger. The Lawson family murders weren't just a tragedy. They were a reflection of what happens when trauma, silence, and shame go unchecked. The scariest part? Nobody saw it coming, and sometimes that's the real nightmare. All right, friends, if you thought the Lawson case was chilling, this next one, it's Southern Gothic to the bone. We're going back further now to 1887 to Bibb County, Georgia, for a case that shocked the South so deeply, it still gets whispered about in courtroom circles and true crime threads to this day. This is the story of the Woolfolk family, a bloodbath that left 9 family members dead in their beds, and one surviving son on trial for mass murder. But was he guilty, or just the last one standing? August 6, 1887, in a modest farmhouse near Macon, Georgia, the Woolfolk family went to sleep like any other summer night. By morning, the house would be soaked in blood. At the center of it all was 27-year-old Thomas G. Woolfolk, the oldest son of Richard Woolfolk, a wealthy landowner. Living in the home were second Richard, the father, his second wife, Mattie, their 6 children ranging from 18 months to 20 years, and a young cousin visiting for the night. Thomas, the eldest, claimed he had been asleep in a separate room. He said he awoke to the sound of groaning and stumbled out to find his entire family dead. He ran half naked to the neighbor's house, screaming, "Murder! Murder! Everyone's killed but me!" Convenient, right?
This show runs on coffee, research rabbit holes, and Southern ghost stories whispered in the dark. If you'd like to support Vivid Nightmares, consider leaving a rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show reach more listeners. And if you want even more haunted history and unsolved stories, visit our link in the show notes to grab bonus content and more. Thanks for helping keep the nightmares vivid.
The sheriff arrived to find a gruesome scene. 9 bodies, hacked to death with an axe. Children with crushed skulls, blood spattered across walls and bedding. No signs of forced entry, no valuables taken. But what really stood out? No defensive wounds. Everyone was killed in their sleep except one child, whose small hand was found raised as if trying to shield a blow. They also noticed something else. Thomas? No blood, no bruises, no cuts, just calm, too calm. And despite claiming he was barefoot, bloody footprints were found that matched his boot size exactly. Thomas was arrested on the spot. He claimed he'd been framed, that a stranger must have broken in, that he loved his family. But the trial was a media circus. The evidence was brutal. Blood on the underside of Thomas's shirt collar, no signs of forced entry. The murder weapon, an axe, hidden behind an outhouse. Men in his own testimony, which kept changing. One of the most damning pieces of evidence, a neighbor swore they saw Thomas washing blood off his arms at the well. Before calling for help, Thomas's defense argued he was being railroaded, that the real killer got away, but the public wasn't buying it. The Atlanta Constitution called him A cold, calculating creature who destroyed his own blood for inheritance, he was convicted of all 9 murders and sentenced to death. And on October 29, 1890, after 3 years of appeals, delays, and prayer, Thomas Woolfolk was hanged at the Bibb County Jail. His final words, "I am innocent. May God have mercy on those who condemned me, innocent or not." Nobody else was ever charged. And the house? It was burned down by the townspeople, like they wanted the memory erased. The Woolfolk Massacre left a deep scar on Georgia. 9 bodies, 1 survivor, no other suspects. For over a century, some have questioned Thomas's guilt, suggesting maybe a servant or an unknown attacker did it. But no solid alternative theory ever stuck. The land where the house once stood, people say it still feels off. Locals reported screams from the woods, lights flickering in the brush. Some even claimed to see a man in old-timey clothes standing in the field that night. But it's the victims' ghosts that get mentioned most. A nearby farmer once told a reporter he heard children's voices. Near the fence line, where no children had lived for decades, some say the cries come every August, as if the house tries to remember what it lost, and every now and then, a traveler will stop on that empty road and swear they saw a figure walking toward them, carrying an axe. So now we've met 2 Southern families, torn apart by blood and silence. 1 father, 1 son, 2 houses, 2 unthinkable crimes. One confessed, the other went to the gallows claiming innocence, but both left ghosts behind, whether in the fields, the shadows, or just the stories we tell to keep the darkness at bay. And that, guys, was a dark walk through 2 Southern homes that were supposed to be safe. 2 families taken out not by strangers, but by someone who sat at the dinner table with them. We started in North Carolina with the Lawsons, a Christmas family photo hiding an unspeakable secret, a father who planned it all, down to the baby's final breath. Then we traveled back to 1887 Georgia, where Thomas Woolfolk was the only one left alive, after 9 people, his kin, were slaughtered in their sleep. One left behind a shotgun, the other an axe. Both left behind questions. And whether you believe in curses, madness, or just the terrifying truth of what some people are capable of, you know these stories stay with you. So thank you for sitting in the shadows with me tonight. If this episode left a chill in your spine, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share vivid nightmares with your fellow true crime and haunted history lovers. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok in Vivid Nightmares Pod, or email me your favorite Southern ghost story or forgotten crime at vividnightmarespod@gmail.com. I'm your host, Bridget Denise, and I'll be back next Friday with another episode that'll make you side-eye your highway at night. Next week, we're going on the road. Ghost hitchhikers, abandoned gas stations, highways that twist a little too far into the dark. It's roadside horror, Southern style. Until then, lock your doors, trust your gut, and may your nightmares stay vivid.